We are back again. That's the rap version. This is Third Floor Theatrics from Studio 26. I'm Darren.
I'm Noah. And today we are going into episode 13, and we're going to be talking about grandparents and siblings. So, a more family-oriented.
But fun. The fun kind of family. Are we starting with, do you want to start with the siblings, or are we doing the grandparents first?
Oh, it don't matter. Let's just start with siblings.
Sibling rivalry 101.
Mm-hmm.
When your brother says, son? No.
That's your dad.
I know. Well, he calls me, his older brother used to call me son all the time. It was a very weird dynamic. No. Yeah, so we both have siblings. You have one, unless there's one that you don't know about.
I have some step siblings.
Do you? Do you get along with those guys?
I mean, we don't not get along. We don't talk very often. We don't really have too much to...
You're not real tight.
For a while, the youngest step sibling lived with us. He was 1 year younger, 1 or 2 years younger than me. He lived with us for a while.
And this is on your mom or dad's side?
Dad's. Mm-hmm.
Billy? Little Billy?
No, his name's Alex.
Oh, yeah, Alex.
And then I have my biological sister, Abby. And then you've got 8 brothers.
No.
Don't you?
No. I've got 2 brothers, Tony, a.k.a. Jarvis Slade, and that's a recording name.
Mm-hmm.
He's 11 years older. And then I've got James Brown. That's his real name, a.k.a. Jimp. I've called him Jimp since he was a little kid, and he's 8 years younger. Mm-hmm. I've got a stepsister, Pam, who's 65.
Mm-hmm.
So she's 14, 15 years older than me. And then I have a half-sister, who, Marcy, who I've never been close to. She lives in Muncie. She was born in 83, so that'd make her 38, something like that. 39. I'd be 39 this year, I think. So yeah, I've been close to my brothers for sure.
Yeah. My sister, she's 5 years younger than me. So growing up, that was...
So she's really a kid.
Yeah. That was tough, growing up with a younger sister.
In what way?
We did not get along.
And you had to play dress up, and you wore the dress and the little pink slippers.
It was when she was really younger, we got along.
Right.
And then when she started learning how to talk and talk back and be annoying, that's when we stopped getting along.
Right.
But now we're decently close. We get along fine.
Right. Decently close.
I mean, we're not best friends. We're good friends.
Right.
As siblings go.
Right.
But it's not like we hang out all the time.
Yeah.
And stuff.
So you don't see her that much, or do you? Or
no, I see her enough. About as much as I see my parents once every year when they come
once
visit
a year
me in my cave.
Right.
No, we see each other a few times a month at least.
Right.
Then we'll talk text and stuff. But yeah, when we were younger, we just did not get along. She really liked me, but I didn't like her.
Yeah, one of those deals.
Yeah, and back then, my patience was very slim. And she was a smart kid. She knew how to annoy me. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of it was just younger sister wanting big brother's attention and stuff. Yeah. And that's how she got it, because it ticked me off. One funny story is I don't remember this too well, but she always tells it to me, how one day she came in my room and she wouldn't leave me alone. And I looked at her and I was so angry, and I bit my arm. I took my forearm and I just bit it really hard and left a mark. And I went and told my parents. I said, Abby bit me. Tell her to leave me alone.
How'd that go over?
I don't remember, but apparently she left me alone for a while.
Right.
No, I really only remember playing with her when I was extremely bored. Mm-hmm. And I would go
last
and be
resort
hey,
type of thing.
Yeah, hey, you wanna do something? And we'd do something.
Right.
And it was always the same old stuff. And then kind of when she got older and then I got older, we just kind of stopped talking as much. I'd take her to school and all that kind of stuff, but we would just really not say anything. We both just kept our distance. And then after I moved out, we kind of got closer and stuff. And
Right.
She doesn't annoy me anymore, which is good.
Well, siblings can annoy you at any age, I guess.
Yeah, especially when they're younger, the opposite sex.
Mhm.
Like it can be hard. Like
Right.
if I ever have kids, I don't want them to have that big of a gap between
Right.
each other.
Right. I, my older brother is 11 years older. So when I was, let's say 7, he was already 18.
Mhm.
So, he was out running around with his buddies and stuff. And so when I was little, I remember like certain things when we lived before my mom got remarried in the house we lived in at that time. And I remember, spending time, not really spending time with him, but just certain incidents that happened, certain things that happened. And then, when she got remarried and my little brother was born, he moved out pretty quick after that. He moved in with grandma up in the country. And so he would come down and visit. And so we always had fun. We'd always make, he had a Super 8 film camera. So we were, this is before VHS even. So we were making little home movies. And that's probably where I really started getting to love making movies, was when he brought that camera down. And so we were making movies and making little cassette recordings of little fake talk shows and all kind of stuff. And then, I think, and then, Jamie being 8 years younger, like, didn't have a whole lot to do with him until he got a lot older.
Yeah.
And it was probably, I don't know, like when he got into his 20s, let's say when he was 20, I would have been 28.
Yeah.
So by the time we both were in our 20s and adults, then we started hanging out. We started going to concerts. We would occasionally go to a movie. We started going out of town a lot. We go to Evansville and places. So I think as the older he got and we sort of got closer, and then, it's like we hardly ever three together. So I'm with Jamie and we're doing, going to concerts or going out of town, or sometimes whatever. And then usually if I'm with Tony, we're doing music, because primarily when I do music, it's with Tony. So, but we're hardly ever three together. It's like I'm either with Jimp or with Tony, or, so.
Do they hang out a lot?
Not really. No, I mean, they have done, like, there was a brief period a few years ago where they went out of town a few times together. Like just the two of them went to like Terre Haute or Evansville or something. And, they went to a music store or something and looked at guitars or something. And then there was times that he was, he was recording music, at Tony's house. So he went up there to Tony's and recorded music, but it's been a while. Like it's been a good while. I think it just, life and people's jobs and everything.
Yeah.
But it's always been a sort of, we've not really ever had like a bunch of times where it was the three of us together. Now, there was times that we said, hey, we're going to Eville, let's invite Tony.
Yeah.
And so Tony would go with us. It's been probably 10 years since that happened. Like he went with us a few times, and we would take him to a cool restaurant, or we would take him to somewhere. We go to Barnes & Noble, or sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But that kind of fell apart, so it just stopped happening. It wasn't really any reason for it. It just stopped happening. So, like I said, it's usually if I'm with Tony, we're recording music and recording songs. If I'm with Jimp, we're going to concerts or
picking up chicks.
No, not picking up chicks. That's not a thing. So we just it's sort of like almost like different friends. We kind of, with one friend you kind of have this hobby and you do this, and somebody else you kind of do this because they don't have that interest. But we've all three got along pretty well. I mean, and there's been a couple times where we've all three recorded music together, like the three of us. On a couple occasions where we got together, the three of us, and jammed and recorded some songs. But usually that doesn't happen. Usually I'm with one or the other. And we'd all be together sometimes on holidays. The last couple of years have kind of been messed up there, I guess, because of work and COVID and just different things. And, I've been staying away from people somewhat. But yeah, I mean, we get along good. I mean, I've had, there's times I've got into it with Jimp, and there's times I've got into it with Tony a little bit over something, but it never lasts very long. It's never like some big monumental thing where it's like, oh yeah, it's always minor, and then it just goes away, and we just got to get over it. And
Yeah.
you know,
I get along with my sister now for the most part. Every now and then, we'll butt heads a little bit.
right?
Just because, like, she'll come to me and say, Mom or Dad was doing this, like, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, they know better. Like, and that can be hard because you turn to somebody
Yeah.
and you're wanting to rectify what you did.
Mm-hmm.
But then that person tells you, well, listen up. Like, there's another side of the story that you just don't understand yet.
Right.
But I wouldn't call those arguments or anything.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of times too that my parents do something and she tells me about it. And I'm like, yeah, like you did the right thing.
Yeah.
Like, or you have a right to be mad over that.
Right.
Yeah.
I think there's times that, I don't know. I think there's times now that we're all older. I mean, I'm 49.
Mm-hmm.
Oh crap! I just gave my age away on the air. And Jamie is 41, and then Tony's 60.
Yeah.
So we're all older, and I think there's times that I typically talk to Jimp or Jamie. So if you hear me say, if the audience goes, "Who's Jimp? Who's Jamie?" Same person.
Yeah.
I typically talk to Jimp, 2 or 3 times, a couple times a week. We go out of town about once a month. We go to the concerts been screwed up with COVID, and so many shows have been canceled and stuff, but we do that a couple times a year, and we'll see each other sometimes at the holidays. But I mean, we talk on the phone at least twice a week. So me and Tony, not so much, me and Tony we just don't, we have different interests. And the only interest that we really gel upon, I think me and Tony is probably the music. Because most of the music I've recorded in the last, 11 or 12 years has been with Tony, and so usually if I'm getting together with Tony, it's for music stuff. And, but I would say right now I'm probably closer to Jimp.
Don't show this episode to Tony.
Yeah. He probably, I don't know. He may listen. I think he's listened to some of our stuff, but
that's good.
But no, I mean, we all get along for the most part. But we are, like I said, we're all at different ages.
Yeah.
And, there's 19 years between Tony and Jimp. That's a stretch. It's like generational parent difference. I mean, that's, so, but I have a lot of fond memories of like when I was little with Tony. And then I have, other fond memories of when Jamie came around and when he was little, Jimp always, he always, talks about the 80s, even though he was born in 1980. But he always talks about the 80s when we were kids. And I do have a lot of fond memories of that time at Christmas and just TV shows we watched and things we did. And even though he was 8 years younger and I was getting, like when I was going into high school, when I was in high school, he was a little kid.
Yeah.
So we weren't close, but we did get along. And I mean, I think he drove me nuts sometimes and I tormented him. I remember one time he wanted to camp out in my room and he wanted to sleep in my room and camp out, stay in my room. So I said, oh, okay, and
you scared him.
No, well, I did. I think I don't even remember what I was doing. I was trying to freak him out, or I kept wiping spit on him or something.
Oh my God.
I did something that drove him nuts, and it seemed like, I don't know if he ended up slapping me or something happened. I don't know. But that, it was, like I said, we didn't really get close until he would become an adult.
Yeah.
Because like I said, once he was in his 20s, then it's sort of like we just gelled. And a lot of it was over music also. Like, that's the one thing that all three of us are sort of music fans and play music. But my stepsister, being that she's so much older than me, because she's even 5 years older than Tony.
Yeah.
I'd see her at the holidays every year. We always had a good time at Christmas, and we'd go to their house. They'd come to our house, or, and I would go stay at her house. Like I would in the summers, I'd go stay at my stepsister Pam's house and ride 4-wheelers. And they lived outside of Petersburg, and we'd ride 4-wheelers and we'd just mess around and blow up stuff with firecrackers. And, It was good, fond memories for sure. I mean, definitely.
Yeah, with my step siblings, like I obviously got, I got along with the sibling that was a year younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
Like we went to school together, drove to school together, and everything.
Mark?
No, Alex.
Alex.
And then the older step siblings, which are older than me, that like they were never really around too much because they had their jobs, all that kind of stuff, like adult things.
Adult stuff.
So I would see them and stuff at holidays, but I'm not a very talkative person.
Seems like you talk my ear off half the time. What are you talking about?
So I could almost put money on that I've talked to you more in just an average work day than I have to both of them combined in my entire life.
I mean, I don't know what that says. It either says that
I haven't talked to them a whole lot.
I mean, I know I'm charismatic and people are just drawn to that. I know that people are just drawn to my charisma. They're just drawn to the insanity and the creativity and the charisma. I understand that. So I'm not. You
better watch out. The comments are going to be filled with one word in particular. It's going to be narcissist.
Well, hey, if we get any comments at all at this point, I'm happy. So
yeah. But no, like, it's not that we didn't get along or anything. It's just that we never gelled. Like we just never had anything to talk about, or I don't know. But no, like, there were points, like I said earlier, when me and my sister just kind of just stopped talking.
Right.
Like we lived under the same roof and would see each other, but we just didn't talk. And all that was just kind of a blur at this point. Like, I don't remember what happened.
Right.
I think we just, like, she finally realized, like, okay, I just need to stop talking to Noah. Like, he doesn't like me.
Well, who knows? I mean, I think I always hear stories about people who have maybe a lot of siblings or even just a few or one, and they're like, yeah, I haven't talked to my brother in 10 years. And I'm like, really? To me, that's like, it's sort of, I just don't get that. It's like, I mean, I know not everybody's real tight with their siblings. Like, I'm really tight with Jim, and at times I've been really tight with Tony. And usually it's a project involved. We're working on a project and we have a lot of fun. When, we get up there and jam and stuff, we laugh.
I feel like that's what you do with a lot of people, though. Like, when me and you hang out, we do the podcast.
Right.
When you and James and Ian hang out.
Well, I'm an opportunist. Opportunist. So I'm always looking for
if nothing's getting accomplished, Darren ain't coming over.
That's right. It's all business. I'm an opportunist. And if I feel like you can make me look good, and if you can progress me somewhere in some fashion, and professionally, well, I'm all about it. If not, I'll dump you like a hot potato.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know what I was saying at this point. No, I'm really tight with Jim, and I think me and Tony, it's like, we just have a lot of different interests in life, and the one thing we always gelled over, though, was the music. So I would write songs and go up there, and we would jam, and we'd laugh and talk, and I'd say, well, let's do a song like this, or let's sound. We would jam and practice and then record these songs, and it was always fun to see you get to the finished product, and you've got a CD in your hand, or there's CDs, songs on Spotify or on YouTube, and you go, oh, we made that, and those songs will always be there. So, and those songs will always be songs that me and him recorded together. So it's like a permanent thing, that it will always be there. And, but yeah, I mean, I hear people talk about their siblings, and some people just can't stand their siblings, or they haven't talked to them in 10 years. And it's the weird thing. I can understand if you don't get along with your siblings and maybe there's a fight or an argument or some family drama. But what gets me is like when somebody goes, yeah, I haven't talked to my brother in 20 years. And you're like, what happened? And like, oh, nothing happened. We're fine. We just don't talk. And I'm like, 20 years? Like, yeah, it's like, really? I can understand if it's a fight, but it's like, if you get along, what is the problem? And even if you don't talk all the time, it's like, send a message on Facebook or something. I mean, it's just weird to me, I guess.
And if you get two personalities of people like that just they're not the reaching out kind.
Right.
I can see how that kind of happens. Like, if neither person are really making an effort,
right?
Like, time goes by quick.
Oh, it does. I'll give you that.
But I think it's important for, even if you don't get along with your siblings, or you just haven't talked to them in a long time, or you're an only child, you don't have any siblings. I feel like most people have someone in the sibling role. Like, I didn't have, growing up, like an actual brother, but I had friends that
ghost
were
brother.
I had very close friends that like were like my brothers, you know? And I feel like a lot of people have that with certain people. Like, oh yeah, it's not blood related, but like we might as well just be brothers at that point.
Right. It's like a, it's like it's kind of like sometimes how, people, well, I used to work, this is kind of funny you brought that up. Like, one of my coworkers ex-coworkers who I'm sure is not listening to this, Valerie, I worked with, when I started working up there on where my day job is located. She had been there for years already as a tech and an activity person. And she just recently switched jobs, not from that organization, not from there, but from the total organization. She left that to something else. But anyway, so I worked with her for years, and she never had any siblings. And we worked together so much. She was like a sister.
Yeah.
In fact, I always called her sister, and she called me brother. And we got in this, I don't know how it got started. We wrote up this fake contract where we were going to adopt each other.
Oh my God.
As siblings. And we actually wrote this up, and she typed it up, and we had someone put a notary stamp on it. And I don't know where the hell my copy went. I had it. I think I have it at the house. I hope I didn't lose it. I don't know if she still has hers, but it was just a running joke thing. It's like, and still, like, she'll sometimes message me, "Hey brother, I saw that post." And I'll say, "Hey, and I'll say something about my sister, Valerie. But we sort of had that running joke because she had no siblings. And so I said, well, we'll adopt each other as siblings.
Yeah.
That
makes sense.
Like I said, we had this fake contract with somebody put a notary stamp on it, and Jane Russell, my old boss, signed it.
Yeah.
Because she was going to be the witness. And so we did this whole thing because she had no siblings.
Oh boy.
And we were, pretty tight. And for a long time, it was just the two of us up there on the unit. And so it was just, every day it was just me and her. And so we had to kind of do everything.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, she had no siblings. So I sort of became, in a sort of a joke way, that sort of took on the brother role,
Yeah.
But
I think a lot of people have that too. Like whenever, like my friends from high school, majority of them worked at the same place I did. So like you're spending every day at school with these people, and then after school you're working with them.
Right.
Like, so you're around, and then you hang out outside of that. Like you're just around them all the time. So it's real easy to like develop that kind of bond with somebody.
Right.
Whether it be your sibling or a close
coworker,
friend,
classmate, or whoever.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. Like I'm happy with where me and my sister are at now. Like I'm glad that we still just like don't talk, and well, she never hated me, but I hated her.
Pretty rough, man. It's pretty rough.
I'm glad we're not like that anymore. Like I've matured a lot. She's definitely matured a lot. We have a lot of the same opinions on a lot of things, which is something we really gel with because, like we have a lot of the same opinions, and we're kind of one of the only people in our family that have those opinions.
Right.
So like when things get heated, like we try and stick together. Everything. But we just try not to get involved with that kind of stuff anyway.
The riffraff.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see how siblings develop over the years, I guess, because, as the years go by and older people start passing away, like grandparents and parents, you really hope that the siblings will stay tight and support each other. And, if something really bad happens to somebody in the family or a close friend, you really hope that they'll be sort of have each other's back.
That's what my parents always told me growing up. They would say, your mom and your mom and me, we're going to be dead one day, and you're going to be stuck with Abby, and you don't even like her.
Right.
And it's like...
Because you were just a little snot, basically.
I was not. I was a very well-mannered...
It sounds like you...
I was a very well-mannered, respectful kid, but she knew how to push my buttons.
Right.
And she was a little...
Well, that's what siblings do.
Well, she did it to the extreme. She purposely annoyed me, and it was...
Because you always see that in like sitcoms and TV shows and movies where it's always the older brother tormenting the younger brother.
No, I just tried to mind my own business.
But you see that. You see that. And I think but she apparently annoyed you.
Yeah.
But you see that. I
just hung out to myself.
Just like, okay, I'm just going to stand by myself. And
then she'd come over and do stuff.
Do you guys think you'll get closer as you get older, or how do you feel? I mean, I know there's no way to predict that. But.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, maybe. Right. I think right now, like, if something... Like, there's some big things that me and her have talked about. That
bank heist, bank robberies.
No, like, stuff that, like, are big things that she's came to me about.
Right.
Like, she's felt close enough that she could tell me. And there's stuff that I've told her about and everything. So I don't know. It'd be interesting to see, like, what it would be like in
10 years
10
or something.
years, yeah. Because right now, like, she is in high school, and she's doing all high school things and driving around with her friends. And,
party time.
Yeah. So...
Cruising.
It'll be interesting to see how things
kind
of go over when she's, like, a full-blown adult.
Yeah. I think if you have a sibling and you hope that you get along with them, if you don't, try to get along with them. If you have any problems, try to mend those fences and try to bury those hatchets, because everybody does get older, and sometimes things happen and people pass away from whatever some fluke thing or weird thing, and you don't want to leave,
Yeah.
You don't want it to end with you don't want it to end on a bad note. You don't want somebody to pass away and you go, well, we had all this unresolved stuff. Now it's never going to get resolved.
Mm-hmm.
You want to sort of end with a clean slate.
It's like, now I don't have to deal with it.
Well, there's that too, I guess, if you hate your sibling, but, no, it's, I think it's good to have siblings because, there's the other side of the coin, which is like people who are only like Valerie was an only child.
Uh-huh. I think
there could be a plus to that, I guess.
One thing I've noticed with people who are only children,
spoiled rotten.
There's always something with them. Like they're bratty, or they're spoiled.
Yeah.
Or they're just odd, because I feel like with the first kid, like the parents are learning and stuff like that. And then the second kid comes along and it adds a whole new dynamic.
Right.
Like the second kid just changes everything. Because there's a total difference between having one kid and two kids.
Right. Well, and, but it's like with us, it's like, I was 11 years younger than Tony. So I don't know. It may have felt like he didn't have because I was a baby.
Yeah.
And Jamie was 8 years younger than me. So it was like.
Yeah, it's strange how spread apart you guys are. Like that's not very common.
Well, my mom got married young. I mean, not super young, but 20-ish or whatever. And had Tony. And then I don't know if they didn't want to have any more kids. I don't know. And then 11 years later, here I come stomping into the world like a beast. and then they got divorced. Well, when my mom got remarried, my stepdad, he, I think, always wanted a son.
Yeah.
So, and they were older when they had Jamie. I mean, they were like, my mom was like 38 and my stepdad was like 43. And which is like, nope, sorry, nope, not for me. But, so they were older when they had Jamie. So that's why we're all so spread out.
Yeah.
I don't know that I don't think it was really, it was not planned that way. It's just the way it happened. And it's surprisingly, but I think we didn't get as close as we are now, even until everybody was older.
Yeah, I feel like that's when a lot of people get closer.
Because when you're kids,
like you're all doing your own thing.
Especially, now if you're like 2 years apart, 3 years apart, you're probably almost like best friends because you're almost the same age. So you're running around the house, you're playing. But if you're 8 years apart, 11 years apart, or God forbid, 19 years apart, there's no connection.
Yeah.
You're almost 20 years old and you got a baby brother.
Yeah. That child could have easily been yours.
Yeah.
At
I mean,
that
that's
point.
that. Like I said, like we said earlier, it's almost like a parent separation as far as the number of years. But anyway, we're good and we get along good and we're all kind of similar in a way, but yet we're all three different. So
yeah. Yeah, that's about all I have to say on siblings.
now he's going to go home tonight and he's already home because the studio is located at his home. He's going to, when the mics go down, he's going to have a tear-filled romp through the house, probably break some stuff and you know me. And think about how bad he treated his sister when he was little. So
no, me and her have talked about it and we joke about it.
You made peace about it?
Yeah, we joke about it and she was like, we'll talk and she'll be like, you did this and like you didn't like, did you really not like me that
You're
much?
Like,
and
nope.
I'd be like, yeah, I really did not like you. Like I did not.
It's because I said.
And my grandma and my parents would talk to me all the time, like you need to stop with Abby. Like you need to be nicer. And I'd get so angry with them because I'd be like, you guys don't understand. Like you think she's just this innocent little girl, but like she's tormenting.
She's
me.
a monster.
She knows what she's doing.
Yeah.
And
but you finally got over that.
Yeah. If she was still like that, I guarantee I wouldn't be over it. But if she stopped,
I know you are one to hold a grudge. Yeah. I will say that, one to hold a grudge.
She stopped. She grew up. Stopped acting like a child, and now we're good.
You're both still children in my book. Anyway,
I'm 4 years legally an adult.
Wow.
Yeah.
4 years. Wow. Okay. Anyway.
Wow.
So let's. Segment 2, we decided we were going to talk about grandparents. And that's another situation that some people have great, memories and great times, and other people have horrible.
Yeah, I feel like grandparents is one of those things that either people are like really close with their grandparents or their grandparents are just, like kind of there.
Yeah.
Like me, I'm really close with my grandparents.
Right.
Like
literally and figuratively.
Yeah. So with my grandparents, like growing up, every summer I would go over for like a week or 2 weeks and I'd call it like a vacation. I'd just go and spend time with my grandma and grandpa. And then also when I was younger, like when I'd go over there, just on normal days, I would like cry when I had to leave and my dad would get so upset. He was like, you'd act like I beat this child at home. Like he doesn't want to go home with me. He wants to stay here, and it would make him feel bad. But like, I've just always been really close with my grandparents.
Right.
And that I've always been the golden child.
Here we go.
The favorite. The unspoken, sometimes spoken favorite.
The golden child.
And I don't know, like, I'm glad I'm close with my grandparents. They've taught me a lot. They've taught me a lot of like good values. They're both really good people. And then my other grandma, we're not as close, but I don't think I was around her as much growing up. She's very sweet person.
And it has a hell of a singing voice.
I don't know if she sings or not. But no, like we've kind of just talked more about like other things. Like one thing that we talk about a lot is like pets and stuff. Because the other grandparents I was talking about, the Irvin side, they don't like pets.
Right.
And the other side, the Tace side, she likes pets. So we talk about pets a lot. And the woods I always talk about, those are her woods and stuff. And I lived there temporarily, well, not temporarily, for a while whenever my parents were divorced. Because my mom lived with her. Like, they completely redid the basement. Like, that was our house. So I lived with her, and that was cool. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are like that. I was kind of like that. You have one set of grandparents you're really close to and one maybe not quite as, for whatever reason. So...
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with your parents, too. Like,
yeah.
I feel like most of the time your parents will favor one side. Like, oh, like, you might go to this side of the family stuff more often.
Right. Well, see, mine was maybe a little different, unique, because my parents were divorced when I was little. So, and my mom was a single mom for like 8 years before she got remarried or 7 years or something. I don't know. But so, she was a single mom working, and Tony was a teenager out running around with his buddies. And so I was a little kid. So I spent, and I talked about this on a past episode, I spent a lot of time with my grandma and grandpa Morgan on my dad's side. And which is weird because like you'd think I would have spent more time with her parents or her mom. Yeah. But I spent time with my dad because my mom always had a good relationship with my dad's parents. Even though my parents were divorced, she had a real good relationship with my dad's parents. And, you know, there was no animosity between them. The fact that my parents got divorced, there was no animosity between my mom and my dad's parents. So she would go to work. She worked evenings a lot, and I would go stay down there. And that was the house I told you that was down by the university. And at the time in the bad part of town. And I spent a lot of time with them, a lot of time. The reason I didn't spend as much time with my mom's mom, you know, her own mom, is because she lived out in the country. She lived out past Bruceville.
That's how my other grandma was too. She lives out in the country.
Right. So, and the reason was like, you know, she had to get to work. She had to drop me off. She had to get to work. And so it was just much easier to do it here in town and Bruceville's not that far, obviously, but it was so much easier. And because of that, I became so close to my dad's parents and was there all the time. I spent a lot of time down there, and I would go to my grandma's out in the country. My grandpa had died when I was 5. My mom's dad. So it was just Grandma Williams out in the country by herself. When I went up there, it was a totally different thing because it was just this big old kind of creepy 2-story house in the country. And there never was as much to do. And she didn't spoil me like my Grandma Morgan did. My Grandma Morgan spoiled the hell out of me.
So what I'm getting out of this is our situations are pretty much identical. Like my other grandma, Grandma Tace, or Judy, she lived out in the country, and my other grandma would babysit me more because she didn't work, but my grandpa did, and my grandma Judy was just her. My grandpa died when I was like born,
little,
I don't even know if I was 1 year old yet. And she didn't spoil me as much, but she didn't have as much money. It was just her.
I think
like our situation,
they're similar,
very, very similar.
See, my grandma that lived by herself up in the country, though, I think she had more money because she owned that farm. She had all that.
My grandma owned a farm as well.
See, there you go. She had all that farmland, and she made good money. My grandparents here in town that I spent most time with. My grandpa worked at the paper mill, which was here in town, and my grandma worked at a dime store on Main Street. But what she would always do, because she worked in town and worked right there, I had gifts, like every time I went to her house. There was a Star Wars figure, there was a Hot Wheels, there was some kind of Marvel character, and, you know, we talked about junk food on an earlier episode. Grandma Morgan always had Funyuns.
Oh, yeah.
And
I know what you're talking about.
Chips.
My grandma was the same way.
And just a junk food city.
We could go in there right now and there'd be a whole cabinet full.
Yeah. So, but what happened, unfortunately, was my grandma Morgan died when I was 10. I was between 10 and 11. I was it was a couple months before I was turning 11 that year. And when she passed away, well, back up a little bit. So my mom got remarried, and I didn't have to stay at anybody's house, you know, because my mom became a stay-home mom when Jimp was born. But I would still go to my grandma and grandpa Morgan's every Friday night. Like, they would pick me up after school. I would stay the night and I did that for about 4 years. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, about 3.5 years. I did that every Friday night for about 3.5 years. They would pick me up, and then grandpa would bring me home, drop me off on Saturday morning. And I did that week in, week out for 3.5 years. And then Grandma Morgan passed away, and she was only like 60, 60 or 61. She died pretty young, had a heart attack one night. And that was the end of that. Like, I quit going down to my grandpa's because I really was always closer to grandma.
That's how I kind of am. Like, me and my grandpa, like, he's a great grandpa. He's a great guy in general. But I've always had a little bit more personal relationship with my grandma. Like we've
Right.
always kind of talked a little bit more.
Right.
And I feel like that's the case with a lot of people. Like grandpas are more like hardened and they don't talk as much.
And my
but
grandpa was
grandmas
very
are-
old school. So
Yeah.
he was, but when that changed was when I was about 13 or 14. And I got to be, by that time, my other grandma had passed away. So now I only had one grandparent, and that was my grandpa Morgan.
Mhm.
And when I was probably 13 or 14, I started going down to visit him. Like every Saturday, I would just go to his house. And I did this all through high school, and I did it for quite a few years after high school. Every Saturday, I would go to his house and just hang out all afternoon. And he would be watching sports, or he'd be watching some old Western. And we really rebonded. And so when I got older, we got a lot closer again. And I think that point's when we got close. Like when I was little, it was grandma. And then grandma passed away. And then I sort of wasn't close to grandpa. I'd see him at Christmas. I'd see him on my birthday, and he'd come down and bring me gifts. I'd see him different times. And then it got to be a teenager, and I just wanted to spend time with him. There wasn't any one thing that made that happen.
It was probably just a lot of it was like subconscious. Too.
It probably was.
Like,
and
I
it
lost
just
my other grandparents. Like he's the only one left. Like,
right. And I think that might have been it. But I think more than anything, he was just fun to talk to. Like he was, and I've said this before, like if you can imagine me in my 60s or 70s, of course, being about 5'7", he was not a very big guy. He was kind of a little guy.
Well, you're only like 5'8".
I'm 5'4.5", but that's without heels. But but when I was a teenager, I really reconnected with him, and I was always closer to him, even than my own dad.
Yeah.
And so, but I spent a lot of time with him, and then there was times as I got older when I didn't see him as much, and then I tried to reconnect again, and I reconnected again later when he was getting really up in age. And then by the time he got to be like in his 90s and started getting dementia, then me and Tony started trying to take care of him as much as we could. And he lived to be 95.
Yeah.
And he passed away in 2015 at 95. And just at that point, he was a different person. He didn't know who he was, what was going on. His mind was just totally shot. And but I spent a lot of time. I think about the time I spent with him from the teenage years. I mean, literally from the teenage years until I was in my 40s. I really had a lot of time to connect there.
Well, that's good.
And there was years where it kind of dropped off, and then I would see him occasionally. But at the end, we tried to take care of him, even though he didn't know what was going on, and you'd go down there and talk to him, and he didn't know who you were, or he didn't know. He'd always thought I lived in some other town. He'd say, "How's it in Oaktown?" I said, "I don't live in Oaktown." Well, how's it going in Oaktown? He couldn't remember. Yeah. But we were pretty tight, and he was a character, man. I tell you what, he could tell you stories, and he was funny as hell. One of the funniest people I've ever met. He just had this personality that was kind of this grumpy, disgruntled thing, but it wasn't. I don't know. He wasn't really he wasn't a mean guy at all.
Yeah.
He was tough. He was a tough guy, but he was one of a kind.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad that I got to know him, because when he died, I would have been like 40. Let's see, 43 when he died. So I had a whole life with him, really. And a lot of people don't get that.
Yeah.
A lot of people's grandparents die when they're little.
Yeah.
So
one thing I'm kind of like how you said, like you'd kind of fall out and lose touch and everything. I've not just with my other grandma, not so much the grandparents, the Irvin side, because they live so close.
Right.
So that it's way different.
Right.
But like since I've moved out and everything, like with my other grandma and even with my dad and my mom, I don't see them nearly as much anymore.
Right.
Especially because my grandma doesn't get out a whole lot. And most of the time, if you want to see me you have to come to me.
Oh, imagine that.
Because I don't get out and just go do stuff.
Right.
Like, that's just not me. So there'll be long periods of time that, like, I just won't see.
You don't see anybody.
Well, I'll see people, just not my mom or my dad.
Right. You see me.
Yeah. Well, I see you at work mainly.
Yeah.
That's because we have to go there, unfortunately.
Yeah. We're forced to by the government.
Yeah. No, that's something that, like, I wish I could kind of change, but it's just hard.
You can change it.
Well, I know, but it's just hard because it's not my personality.
Right. Don't regret it though. Like, don't get.
That's what I always worry about.
Don't like when they're gone and you go, God, man, I screwed up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, don't get there either, because then you can't do nothing about it.
Yeah, and I've thought about that, and it's hard and stuff.
I think when my mom's mom, the one that, you know, lived in the country on the farm and stuff, she got sick, and she was in her 70s, and she got sick, and she spent like the last part of her life, which was not a real long period of time. She moved in with us because she got sick with cancer and had to have surgery. She was in her, she was in her mid to late 70s, I think, when this happened. So like 77 or something like that. I think she was like 77, somewhere around there. I know she was in her 70s. Anyway, she got sick, had surgery, and mom said, well, you come stay with us and we can kind of, and she kind of, I felt like, got mean. I felt like when she got sick and then moved in with us, I don't think she felt good, and I felt like she kind of got mean.
Yeah.
And we were never super close. Like I said, I was super close with my dad's parents, but my mom's mom, we just, and like I said, part of it was because I didn't see her as much. Now she is the one that would have the big feast though at Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Out in the country. We would go up there, like, let's say Christmas. You know, we would open presents and then go to Grandma Williams' house, and she would have this big feast laid out, and we would all eat and open presents there, and then we'd leave and go somewhere else. She was the one that always had the big feast, whereas my Grandma Morgan, not so much, but my Grandma Morgan would always make this fried chicken. It was like the best fried chicken. I don't even remember what it tastes like because it's been so long ago, but I remember it was, she probably fried it in lard. I'm sure she did.
Use the kernels.
Maybe she didn't. I mean, maybe
spices.
There was something about the way she made this chicken, and I just remember it being like, there was nothing that ever tasted like that. It was just like there was something about Grandma Morgan's fried chicken, and she was the one that I talked about on an earlier episode that we used to go to Spring Mill every year, and that's what she would do. She'd fry up chicken and pack up a picnic basket. That's Yogi Bear there for you. Yeah, she would do the fried chicken, and we would go to Spring Mill, and we would eat the chicken, and we'd do every year. That was our thing, right? Well, so she never had the big meals, but there was just certain things she cooked. And that's where I kind of got, into like, dunking my Oreos in coffee. I know you thought I was going to say, I know you was going to thought this was before the water thing.
This is before water was invented.
No, this is before the water thing. My grandpa was just drinking black coffee, just straight black coffee.
That's how my grandpa and my other grandma.
Yeah, just black coffee. And he always had to have his coffee all the time. And so grandma bought all those snacks, all that junk food, and she'd have Oreos and dip it in black coffee. It's actually good.
I'll have to try it.
It's good. It really is. But she, Grandma Williams had the big feast at Thanksgiving, Christmas. Grandma Morgan, not so much, but she was still a good cook.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm very fortunate that I had such a long relationship, with my grandpa, because everybody else was gone. Everybody else had passed away. And, so yeah, don't make that mistake. I mean, if you can break out of your shell.
Yeah, I know. And I was going to go visit her here recent, but all the snow and stuff happened. So I'm going to have to.
How old is she? Do you know?
I'm so bad with ages. She's older than my other grandparents.
She in her 70s?
Either late 70s or early. I think she's in her early 80s.
Really?
But she is not like an average early 80-year-old.
Right. Good shape. And
yeah, she's excellent shape.
Now, this is in Bruceville or like outside of Bruceville in the country?
Outside of Bruceville in the country. You know where the old turkey barns used to be?
Maybe.
Those were hers.
Okay.
So she lived right next to him. But no, like she recently, within the past year or year and a half, got diagnosed with cancer, and she beat cancer. She's full remission, like she's recovering from it all still now, and that got us all worried and stuff.
Right.
So yeah, definitely need to. I know I need to visit her more.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people I need to visit more and reach out to as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just how I've always been, though, you know. So
secluded.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, I was that way too, and I still like to be home a lot. I still am a homebody. Of course, a lot of things I can do, like my art and stuff, I can do from home or working on film props. So I like being at home too. But I remember, you know, getting reacquainted sort of with Grandpa Morgan and going down there every Saturday and just some of the stuff. You know, I remember when I started writing songs a lot. When I started writing songs like the early 90s, I would go down there and be sitting there, and there was this notepad, this tablet on the fridge, and I would get it and start writing these crazy ass lyrics. I mean, just ridiculously crazy lyrics. And I'd say, hey, read these, Grandpa, read these out loud. I want to hear what they sound like. Read them. And he would read these lyrics that were just, he would, what's that in me? You know, he would read it and he'd look at me like, what? And then I'd say, just read it, finish it. And he'd read it and he didn't know what it meant. And he was
you know what it meant?
Yeah, I know what it meant because I wrote them. But he just would be like, what is that? You know, just stumped. And he was the funniest guy. He just had the craziest sense of humor. And it was just fun to spend. I think that's why I like spending so much time with him. Because there was no like pressure for anything. Like I didn't go down there to learn lessons, or it was just just fun to hang out with. And he would tell you stories about when he was a kid, and he would tell you stories about this and that, and he would talk about stuff. And he always had, I went down there one time, this is towards the end of his life. He had dementia, his health was failing. And I remember we used to go down there. I used to go down there and pick groceries up for him. Tony did the same thing and spend some time with him. And because there was nobody else to watch over him. Yeah. And I remember he was just, and this is like he's out of it and stuff. And he's down there and I was in the other room putting groceries away, and he starts singing, fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. And he just starts singing this. And I'm just like, what is it? But that's his personality. And even when he had dementia and couldn't think straight, he would do that. And he would sing these little songs, and he'd get up and do some little dance. And I'm like, he was still Grandpa, you know. But I think that's why I like spending so much time with him, because him, you know, compared to everybody else, it just was no comparison. He just had that sense of humor and that craziness and that silliness, and he was just silly. You know, he was I think I've told you this story. This is his in a nutshell. Like, he was taking me to work one time. Do you remember this story? He's taking me to work, and we pull in it was that restaurant I worked at. It was one summer, he gave me a ride to work. He said, you want me to give you a ride? I said, yeah. He comes, picks me up, drives me over there, and we pull in, and there's this lady pulling in, and the car pulls in, and I don't know why he did this, but he yells out something like, watch out, you son of a bitch, or something. I don't know what he yelled out. He yelled something, and I'm just like laughing, and the car stops, and this guy gets out of the car and runs up to the window and says, I don't appreciate you talking to my wife that way. And my grandpa just looks at him and goes, oh, I thought that was my niece. I'm just joking. I'm just joking. I mean, that was just him. Yeah. Like, he just had this sense of humor that was just, he was a character. I mean, like right out of a movie. He would give you these looks and these expressions, and he would yell out stuff and scream. He was just a character. And I think that's why I went down there so much later on even. Yeah, because it's fun to be around those kind of people. Right. He was entertaining. He was fun. And then plus you got the little bit of the family history, and he was just the best. And he made it to 95, even though he just didn't come out unscathed because he had dementia and didn't know what was going on. But he made it a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And he was something else. I mean, he would be a great character in a movie or TV show if to make a character based on him, because he was just so.
Mm-hmm.
He was cool.
Yeah, yeah. Those are the best people to be around. The people that you don't have to be doing anything, just being around them,
just having fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. There he goes again. He's
I had to readjust
the chair for the 15th time tonight.
I'm getting old.
Oh, let's not even start. Don't even start.
I got back problems.
Problems at 22. It's a new TV show.
Football messed me up.
Well, that's your fault. You shouldn't have played it.
I was forced to play.
You were forced to play by the government.
No joke, I really was.
By the government?
No, not by the government. My parents.
Oh,
when I
that's
was
not
younger,
good.
they forced me to play football.
Well, that'll be another
And then when
episode.
I got old enough, I was like, I don't want to
Rebelled
play anymore.
against it. That'll be another episode. We'll touch on being forced to play sports as a child.
Yeah. But no, I think that's pretty much all I want to add to the discussion. I feel like I got everything I wanted to in. Is there anything you want to add in last minute?
It's just sort of what I touched on, I think, a little bit with you, and just if you have grandparents that are still alive, and if you hopefully get along with them, and just try to spend time with them.
Yeah.
They may not be as entertaining and as funny as my grandpa was, and more than likely they're probably not, because he was one of a kind. But regardless of that, if you can spend time with them, because someday they are going to be gone.
Mm-hmm.
So try to spend as much time with them as you can, and help them out, and do what you can for them, and just have fun with them, and talk to them, and just make the time, just make the time for it, because eventually it will be gone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I realized that.
That wasn't directly towards you.
No, you're personally attacking me right now.
But it is a thing. I mean, for sure.
I know. So yeah, I think that's gonna wrap things up. If you've made it this far, thank you. If you liked it, then hit like and subscribe.
The more the better. The more the better.
Tell your friends. Please.
Tell your
Please,
neighbors.
dear God, tell your friends.
Tell the neighbors. Tell the guy down the street.
Mm-hmm. Make your dog listen to it on repeat while you're at work, if that's what it takes.
Just get those numbers up.
Yeah. So yeah, new episodes coming out every Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thanks for watching or listening, whatever you did.
Or watch.
Do what?
Or you maybe just watch the screen and listen at the same time.
Maybe you just watched the screen and muted it. Just looked at the same picture for
over
an hour.
and over again.
And I mean, if that's what you're into,
hey, go for it. We still got an audience. So
yeah, views are the same.
That's right.
Okay, so we will see you guys later.
See you down the road.